All right, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest of honor, Cornel Hillman. I was actually just this morning re-listening to podcast episode with Cornel. It's super interesting. He has such a cool backstory. So Cornel's been in sort of 3D graphics, sort of obsessed with 3D graphics for like the last 30, 40 years or something. It really fell in love with games first. And then from games, the first, when he got that first, did you actually support that Kickstarter, the original Kickstarter for the Rift, the Oculus Rift, and get that?
Actually, I did not put in my own money, but a friend of mine who a game developer who I was working with, he pitched in. So I supported him and he supported it. So basically I was in the second row, basically.
Okay. So by proxy, wonderful. So,
yeah.
So that was, and I just got this in the mail. This is Cornel's latest book, UX for XR, which Sophia, yours truly, has been quoted in, which is very exciting. So there's actually quite a few pages in here about object-oriented UX. Haven't gotten there yet, but the thing that I was quoted on, I stand behind for 100%. So Cornel got into just immediately fell in love with the virtual reality world when he got that first Oculus. I think it was 2014. The Kickstarter was 2013, which doesn't seem like that long ago. It's crazy that 2013, that was the Kickstarter for Oculus. And now like Facebook owns it and it's just worth bajillion dollars or something. So absolutely fell in love with it. Found out about UX kind of around the same time. And from the preface of the book, I learned that learning about UX was sort of a slow burn of falling in love. It wasn't quite love at first sight because Cornel, as a game designer, was having to sort of rethink a lot of things that and maybe even relearn a few things when he started learning about UX design, but then realized that there's such an interesting marriage between virtual reality, extended reality, user experience design, and is now kind of the expert on merging these things together. So Cornel has multiple companies, a lot of really awesome clients, and is really leading the charge and how not only, in this book, the audience for this book is both virtual reality, extended reality designers wanting to integrate more UX, and probably more the audience here, UX designers who are maybe wanting to really future-proof their career by starting to learn what it's going to be like when our clients and our companies start wanting to have extended reality experiences. What happens when we need to start releasing augmented reality apps, even a virtual reality app? What does it look like when our Wells Fargo client wants to have a virtual reality app for the Oculus? Are we going to be prepared for that? So I highly recommend it. I've read the first 7 or 8 pages and all I want to do is clear my books and read this book all day. So, all right. So that's enough for me. Cornel, take it away. We're excited.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Very excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So the book, it has been out for like a few days only, and it's doing really well already. So it's trending #1 on Amazon and UX, and so it's has been doing fine. So I get a lot of positive response, and I think the reason is also because there is no other book like this, and there's a reason for that. Why there isn't another book like this? Because it's not an easy subject to tackle, to take on, because it has so many, so many corners that you need to cover, right? So basically, I have a short presentation. It's 18 slides. So let me know if I'm running over time. Let me know if let me share my screen here. Oh, you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. So is that Sophia? It says like I have this dialogue here. You cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing?
No, it's because I was sharing my music. It's because I was playing DJ, and we
Oh, okay,
didn't do our due diligence. And now I'm making you co-host, so you should be able to do all the things like share your
okay.
screen.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Rookie mistake. Come on, Sophia.
No problem. Is it happening? Is it there? You see it?
Yes, you look great. Beautiful.
Cool. Let me put this over here. So yeah, UX for XR, extended reality, VR, AR, MR. So what I want to talk about is UX for XR in its definition as the UX design process to design digital XR products, and not the role of the UX designer as the UX UI designer who very often tweaks menus and stuff. So it's about the UX designer in his role as a product designer for digital XR products, right? And basically, most of the time I talk about VR and AR. MR is a very open term with a lot of different definitions. That's why I try to avoid it in the book. I also cover why that is a problem. The term is a problem in the glossary at the end of the book. So very often it's better to stick to VR, virtual reality, and AR. And AR is augmented reality. Oh, okay. So let me give a quick info of what I do. I have a business here in Singapore called Studio CG Artist. I do 3D visualization, CG art, animation, and XR design. I use the Unreal Engine, which is a game engine. I used to do Unity, and but I switched to Unreal because it's just much better tool set, I believe. And yeah, I do mostly B2B XR, mostly VR apps, B2B stuff. And very often I also use Twin Motion. It's another sort of engine based on Unreal. And I've been in Asia since 2006. So here's a quick career flashback. Up in the left corner is my early days. I'm in the middle there, looking for trouble. That was in the 90s in Los Angeles. I was doing a print magazine. So this was a magazine called Trading Cards. Back in the day, there was a huge hype, collectibles hype. People were collecting trading cards, and it was a big business. So it was basically the Bitcoin back then was trading cards. It was a Bitcoin of the day. And then I went into 3D game design and interaction design, and I started an e-learning label called CG Artist Software Training, where I released training software, basically training DVDs for CG artists to learn like 3D software, and that was actually great. It was a lot of fun to do that, and was very successful. And after that, I got involved with a gaming startup that brought me to Asia in 2006 to Singapore. And I started, game development, and that brought me to VR. And as Sophia said, I got interested in VR basically in 2013, 14. And one of my first bigger, or I would say more fun jobs was actually The Future is Wild VR, which is on the right. And I still work with these people. We're still working on ideas and projects, so it's still ongoing.
And Cornel, I'm going to cut in. I have a question for you. So that Future is Wild. You talked about that a little bit in the podcast. We didn't get into it, but what was the word you used? It's like basically making up creatures. There was
it's called speculative zoology.
I love that, speculative zoology. Okay,
it's a very special genre, and I love the genre. I'm really into it.
Yeah.
And basically, The Future is Wild brought this very niche genre to the mainstream. Basically, it was always a niche, like in Japan, people were really into it because in the Japanese culture is a little different. People are really into weird creatures and stuff. And it's a very international community of people who who like to come up with interesting creature design, and based actually on science, based on biology, on speculative evolution, basically, right?
Yeah. I can imagine with all the alien movies, it's probably actually
Yeah,
in demand, maybe.
definitely, yeah.
Please continue.
So when I talk to people about XR, I very often I feel like I'm in my own bubble, basically, because a lot of people don't have it on their radar a lot. But most analysts basically agree that it's only 1 to 3 years away, the mass market, the XR mass market. And that's because everyone's waiting for Apple to make their big move. Basically, we're waiting for the Apple headsets, VR, AR, whatever they have. They're working on it. Everyone knows it, and it's coming for sure. It's just a question when. So that's going to trigger. That's going to be a signal for the mass market to arrive. And so right now we're kind of in a weird spot, because right now it's Oculus and it's very dominated by gaming. So it's mostly core gamers that are involved here, 90%. And you have other non-gaming applications, and these non-gaming applications don't get a lot of visibility, but they're there and they're successful. They're very often used in niche industries. But of course, we will see more of that in the future. And so one of the trending things at the moment is digital twins. So a lot of things that are happening right now are in the enterprise space. So enterprise, they're doing a lot of XR experiments, and there's a lot of development in terms of digital twins and mirror world, the infrastructure of the future. I talk about that in my book, what's behind that. And so that's why we're in a weird spot at the moment where it hasn't really arrived, but everyone knows it's coming, and it's for sure coming. It's coming very, very soon. So the reason why I wrote the book is that I really believe that XR needs UX designers, especially for non-gaming applications. Because for any applications that are non-gaming, think of hospital, medical applications where people that are usually not gamers or don't use headsets on a daily basis. These people need a good UX, and that's why we need UX designers to get into this field to make this industry successful. This was one of the reasons. The other reason is XR developers need UX approaches that work for XR. So we need the magic of what has worked so well for mobile and web. We need that UX magic in the XR field. We need to find a way to make that happen, that it works as well as it does for mobile and web. So, and now is the time to take it on, as I said before, because it's a great time, because it's not quite there yet. We're right before it. So now we have time to figure things out. And it's a huge opportunity for designers, because there's so many open things that still need to be defined. And it's also an opportunity to move beyond UX, UI design towards more product design. And so the way I came across OOUX is basically I wrote my first book in 2019, and that book was Unreal for Mobile and Standalone VR. It's basically a hands-on tutorial book, how to actually create VR apps without coding, using the Blueprint visual scripting system in the Unreal Engine, which is very accessible to non-coders, so to designers. So it's based on logic. You have like logic nodes that you connect to build the interaction design and interaction logic using a game engine. So that paradigm is object-oriented, because the Unreal Engine is based on object-oriented programming. So basically everything follows the object-oriented paradigm. So, and when I was starting to research and write my book, UX for XR, I was researching, I was trying to connect basically that object-oriented world with the UX world. And I literally Googled object-oriented UX, and see what popped up. It was Sophia's website. And I thought, man, this is exactly what I was looking for. And, and I thought, okay, this is great because this approach of UX using the object-oriented mindset is great because it's basically the missing link between these worlds, I believe, because it allows you to stay within the same object-oriented paradigm and mindset. And I think it's a natural companion to the 3D object nature of XR. And you guys are probably familiar with object-oriented design. Object-oriented programming and design is based on these 4 principles: encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. And I believe, so you don't need to do programming or anything. You don't need to be a coder to appreciate these principles, because these are just basically the governing principles of the object-oriented thinking. So and I believe that the first 2 are actually the most important ones, I think: inheritance and encapsulation. Inheritance is basically, the parent-child relationships and the hierarchy of objects. And encapsulation is basically how you store data inside of objects. And I really love encapsulation because, usually in procedural programming, procedurally oriented programming, it's kind of like it's not as organized as an object-oriented programming. So object-oriented programming has these containers that are objects, and in these containers you have data and functions, and so everything is neatly packed away. So, and I love that about encapsulation, because it's the stuff is inside of the object, it stays there, it's not visible to other objects, it's there where it belongs. And if you want to access it, you have to reference the object. Then you can actually reference the functions inside of that object. And I think it brings so much structure and order into a project, and it helps you to keep things organized, and instead of being all over the place, right? And I love the idea of bringing this mindset to UX, as Sophia does with her methods. And we started to experiment with that, and we started to use OOUX, the methods that Sophia teaches on our productions. And so basically, I want to illustrate how I do that, how I produce, how I deal with a project this was a tutorial project for my first book. And this is actually a mini game. It's a mini escape room puzzle game in VR. And so I try to reduce this to the very minimum, to the bare minimum, to the essentials, and not think about visuals at all, just really the bare minimum of objects. So what we have here is we have a room. So we have a room, and you start at position A, and you want to escape that room. There's a locked door. When you go to D, where the door is, you have a lock, which is a red lock and a blue lock, and you see, okay, I need to find the keys to open the door. So you'll be looking around in that room in VR, and you'll be looking for the red key and the blue key. And the red key is in a chest of drawers. It's another object which has functions. So you need to open that object. So you need to open the drawer, take out the key. The key is another object with functions. And then you put it into your inventory, which is you pop up your UI. It's an inventory UI. And then you store the first key. You store the second key you find under a pile of boxes. And there's also an igniter that you will later need for the bomb at the last door. And then with these 2 keys, you open the door. And then you enter the next room. In the next room, there's a guard attacking you, F. And then you need to load up on health pickups to survive the guard attack. So you need to, on the position E, you need to pick up all these health items. Otherwise, you will die and you would respawn. So you pick up these health items. These are all objects with functions. So then you survive the guard attack, which is F, and then you have the igniter from your inventory system, and you blow off the bomb at which is G, and then you can escape and position H, and you're out of there. So this is basically the mini game. It has options and functions. And so just to show you how this is done in VR, so basically here's the controller. The controller is its own is a component of the VR pawn. The VR pawn is an actor class. And so basically, here's the visual scripting, just as an example how the visual scripting works. So basically, you're sending out a line trace by channel, where you're sending out a ray. You do ray casting into the 3D space. You see what objects you're hitting, and then you're getting information from that object. And then you're measuring the distance between your controller and the objects that have been hit. And then, for example, use that information to draw, for example, a laser beam or something to point at it. So basically, it's pretty logical what you do here. Another example is the door blueprint, which is an object with functions. So these functions are stored inside of that object, the door object. It's basically at event begin play, it says cast to VR pawn. So it's communicating with the VR pawn. It's talking to the UI, and it's letting the UI know that there's an event dispatcher that's ready, that's armed and ready to go. So anytime you insert the two keys, the event dispatcher is going to fire off and open the door. So basically, that's the logic behind the door object. Just to explain how this works, So basically, the XR object has its role as a game logic object, So basically, the game logic object, interaction, function, game logic. And then it has a role as a design system object. And the design system object is, of course, a different thing, because there you're thinking more from the user perspective. You're thinking about information architecture, attributes, object relationship hierarchy, and basically you're exploring how to design that world, because the user doesn't care if what game logic is the user doesn't care if there's an event dispatcher in the door. He just wants the door to open. He doesn't care about what the game logic behind it is. That's why the design system object is so important to take that on from a different point of view. And that's why I think it's great that to work within that same thinking. As I said earlier, OUX works great for XR because the traditional UX design process is too much geared towards UI. In mobile and web VR, for example, we work. When you look at typical UX stuff, it's usually the rush to UI, where people go and make low fidelity prototypes really quick, because that stuff doesn't apply to XR. The typical UX process, a lot of stuff is just not applicable to XR. That's why OUX is great, because it first looks at what objects are there and how are these objects structured, and then you develop your design out of that. So XR design has its roots in game design, using game engine based on object-oriented programming. Object-oriented thinking is naturally closer to XR. XR design lives in a world of digital objects, 3D objects. OUX is a natural companion in the spatial design world due to its object-oriented orientation and closer match of the user's mental model of the digital world. So what I mean by that is, the XR world is basically, it's very similar to the real world, because if you look at a door in the real world, it's a door, you open it. In XR, it's the same thing, In XR, it's basically a digital door, but you still have to go there and open it. You do pretty much the same movement. You twist the doorknob. So it's basically the mental models are very close to the actual real world, So in my book, I go about how we started to work. So basically, we have a method that we call reality UX, and that contains XR heuristics and conventions. It includes OOUX and XR framework reference database. And what that means is basically we have all these frameworks, and frameworks are basically like, you could call it presets, templates. So you don't always want to start from scratch when designing an XR. You want to have like, you don't want to do everything from scratch. You want to have like, okay, I have a menu template and that I can tweak, that I can customize. So basically this is what the frameworks are for. And to explain that, what's happening, so you guys are probably familiar with the double diamond. So you basically, the first diamond, you basically narrow down your problem. And then in the second time, you start designing. So what I want to do is actually, I want to, in Reality UX, I'm trying to, before actually closing in into the middle of the two diamonds, I'm already looking at the second diamond. So I'm basically kind of like time traveling a little bit. So I'm looking at the second diamond and I'm looking already, what are the framework references? What can I use actually to make my life easier? So that's why I'm trying to kind of visualize that with the overlapping two diamonds, basically, that the second diamond is already taken into consideration before you're coming to the decision between the two diamonds, So that's my way of like trying to explain what's going on with Reality UX, basically. So because the big challenge, and that's also what my book about is the big challenge in XR is prototyping, because most of you guys probably work in web and mobile. So that's a pretty smooth process. You do like low fidelity prototyping, then you seamlessly shift into high fidelity. It's a piece of cake. You do it like the next day, you have a high fidelity. So it's no problem. In XR, it's a huge gap between the two. So basically in XR, you do low fidelity, you do impression testing, you sketch out ideas, you do ideation and that kind of thing. But it's not, it's very often not interactive. It's just to test visual ideas and stuff. But actually to do the proper thing in the UX design process, you need, usability testing. You need, to be able to iterate on your designs. You need the interactive prototype, and the interactive prototype is much more complicated to build because it's based on properly done interaction done in a game engine. So the big challenge is to basically transition smoothly between these two worlds, and that's what my book is very often about, to kind of look at solutions to this problem. So what can you do? How can you design like either by like first doing your low fidelity prototype and then moving to the high, or to so there's different approaches of doing that. So in the book, there's also a case study, Gallery X, which is a gallery for NFTs and crypto art in VR. And so I thought that was a great subject because, first of all, it was such a boom, or it still is a boom, and it's also a bit polarizing. People are so very opinionated about it. You have different, you have very strong opinions about NFTs and crypto art. And you have users there's a lot of misinformation also, there's a lot of disinformation. So it's actually a great opportunity to work something out with UX, to really narrow down what kind of user are you talking to, what do they actually want, and what's missing, what's missing to make them happy, So, and that was a great way to explore what OOUX and the whole design process can do here. So what we did here was, and I actually have to thank my technical reviewer, Tino, who is he's a workshop guy. He does a lot of workshops, and which I don't do this kind of thing. So he's like the workshop dude. He he does these kind of things, and he actually, with him together, we developed this process, and basically what it came down to, basically we did the user interviews, we did the personas, and so then we designed the user journey. Basically, we had some features that we needed to map out. We had required features that needed to be there, And then we had, okay, where the user goes from here to here, from this to this to this. Mostly these are spaces, like the equivalent, I would say, to web and mobile in XR is basically rooms or spaces. What in web or mobile, when you have a page, in XR you have a space or a room, And so you have these different rooms you go to, and then you have touch points, you have CTAs, and you have opportunities to make it better, to fine tune the UX. So basically, we mapped that out, and then we went to identify the objects from the user journey to see like what are the objects that we're dealing with, and then we went into defining the object attributes. So what is it actually? What's the artwork? What does it have? What information is in there? What attributes? And then we, of course, we went into the object relationships, like a gallery or an artwork has like a price, it has an artist, a creator, it has like all these things basically, right? And then from the storyboard, we then went into prototyping using an XR framework, and from there went into testing the whole thing. So basically, this is only a small outtake of the whole thing. Of course, there's a lot more to it. I try to kind of like take like one little piece out of it, kind of illustrate it, And so that's basically it. Am I good in time, or is that okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Feel free to go off mute for a second and